Today's presentation is about understanding microcredentials and the future of learning and professional development. What are microcredentials? Microcredentials are digital verifications of specific skills and competencies. So, whereas, let's say you leave, or my eighth grade students would leave class having mastered a culmination of skills to define them as an eighth grade ELA student. A micro credential would be them mastering specific standards or skills in that class that leads up to the big culmination. Micro credentials are demonstrated through evidence and assessed via validated rubrics. They include badges, certificates, and nano degrees. And micro credentials are ways to document learning using work samples, videos, and other artifacts. So a big focus of micro-credentials were digital badges and the data, even though there are other examples such as the nano degrees, and I believe it was the certificates mentioned earlier. But there are a variety of digital badges used. So digital badges are electronic symbols documenting performance and achievement. It contains metadata for verification. It shows issuer details and evaluation criteria. It includes evidence of work product, and it is stored in a digital backpack for sharing or digital notebook. Now, it can also be hosted on certain sites, like with the nano degrees or certificates. If you complete a micro credential, you're able to post those on like your LinkedIn or on your resume. Some of the benefits of micro credentials include it promotes a lifelong learning because students and learners are able to access skills without having to spend so much money. So it kind of pushes students to continue their learning. It showcases skills outside of traditional education. So away are our essays, our multiple choice options. Here are videos, our reports, and just documentation stating what we learned. It provides a flexible learning pathway. It increases motivation when used appropriately, and it documents progression through the learning. Some of the technology-enabled assessment methods that is included in micro-credentials include, so these are those examples of how students can assess their learning in non-traditional ways. So adaptive testing with personalized difficulty, automated essay scoring for real-time feedback, computer-based testing, electronic portfolios, multiple choice questions is still a form of micro-credentialing, but it is also still one of those traditional methods, but it can be used for micro-credentialing as well. You have your online exams and quizzes, peer assessments, and simulation and gaming. So I teach 8th grade ELA, and for me, a lot of the examples of micro-credentialing that I use in my class that utilizes technology-enabled assessment include the multiple choice questioning, but it is through sites like EdSite where students answer multiple forms of multiple choice questions, not just the traditional A, B, and C. When I say multiple forms, I mean like they could get asked a question for part A and then part B, ask them to support their answers, but both are multiple choice. Another example that I'll use that is technology-based assessment includes online quizzes as well, simulation and gaming. So students are able to play games in class and analyze the ELA elements in the game or any of the 9 eyes of learning in the game. Another thing I use is electronic portfolios through Microsoft OneNote, which I think is a great place for students to place portfolios. And students also do portfolios on Microsoft Sway. And if I had access to Google, I would definitely use Google Sites for this as well. But those are some of the forms of technology-based assessment that I've used in the past for micro-credentialing and for assessing skills. The accessibility and support of micro-credentialing, I'm sorry, I keep saying that. It is 24/7 access to learning materials because it is housed in its own base and you have access to it at all times. There's also library resources, institutional support services. So let's say that you're not able to cover or pay for these micro-credentials yourself. You may also check to see if your library offers free ones, or if you're at an institute, see if the institute supports any type of micro-credentials. You also have your open educational resources, or your OER, your online support systems, and research access for postgraduate work as well. In a professional development, micro-credentials would look like evidence-based learning, the backwards design approach, sustained duration opportunities, active learning and collaboration between learners, personalization to the expertise level, on-demand availability, and follow-up support. For quality assurance standards, there is an aligned with national frameworks for micro-credentialing. These frameworks have procedures that learners follow, and creators of micro-credentialing courses can follow as well. There are minimum requirements, recognizing of learner outcomes in both the objectives and in the end activities. There's quality enhancement frameworks to better assess what you're doing and to help you create a better form of a micro-credential. Excuse me. And there is regular assessment and review for data. Excuse me, for data. In order to build student success for their well-being and to just support students on a micro-credentialing journey, it is recommended that there are recognitions of achievements for students, that there is peer support opportunities, meaning students are able to work together and support each other during the micro-credentialing process. There are identity strengthening activities so students can learn more about themselves and what their strengths and weaknesses are. There should be a diverse representation in resources and cultural relevance so that learners are able to see themselves in their learning and in their micro-credential. And then there should be a form of both community and collaborative building between the students or the learners, but also between the person who is administering this micro-credential. Okay, building student success. Okay. So to kind of expound on this slide, what this will look like in my 8th grade ELA classroom is my goal for building micro-credentials, which I think this is so appropriate to be studying this right now, because I want to utilize learning pathways in my classroom in a way that we do in high school and college. Meaning, when I ask a lot of my middle school students what they want to do, maybe half of them know, and again, none of us really know at their age, unless some of us do. And then the other half of them have no idea what they want to do. So my goal is to build learning pathways so that students can complete the ELA standards based on information that is of interest to them. So let's say one of my students say, hey, I want to be a vet. How about I get all of these resources together for my students to look into this, students that have the same interests, and then work towards a micro-credential to master the skills needed in ELA through learning about being a vet. So, and in this way, I would also choose videos and texts that support the backgrounds of also my students so that they feel like, hey, this is something I can do in the future as well. A big part of micro-credentialing is the intrinsic motivation development. So when acted on properly, micro-credentialing can be an enthusiastic teaching approach. It could be a great start to achievement recognition. It is a great way to give constructive feedback and build community connection. Through project-based learning, performance tasks, you are able to give real-world applications through micro-credentialing. And because students are learning on their own and owning their own work, there is learner autonomy, and there's also personalized goals for students, because even if they are doing this whole class, they are still on their individual paths to completion. With competency-based learning, which is one of the factors of micro-credentialing, it is a form of learning that is based on measurable outcomes. It clears progression pathways. It is practical application emphasis. Again, that is through our, it is a showing of hard and soft skills through different things like project-based learning, UDL design, and I said PBL, UDL, and performance task. It also has a aspect of prerequisite skill mastery, individual pacing, and then evidence-based advancement. So students are only able to advance once they have shown, in whatever form they choose, again going back to personalized learning, whatever form they choose, to show that they are competent in this area. I don't want to be too far behind. Some assessment methods in micro-credentialing, some might be new to some teachers, but for the most part, I feel like these assessments match up to the basic assessments we already use in class. So some of these can be formative assessments, diagnostic feedback. I would add to that summative feedback as well. Enrichment activities, corrective activities, another portfolio evaluation as mentioned earlier. Performance observation and skills demonstration. So the last two I would say for micro-credentialing would probably be newer than the other assessments mentioned in the beginning. All right, going back to those personalized learning pathways, this is another, and flexibility, this is another aspect of micro-credentialing. And personalized learning pathways, which I think is crucial to the middle school setting and can look multiple ways. It could be based on what students want to do once they graduate high school and college, or it could be based on different themes in the classroom. It could be based on if you choose to have multiple texts with multiple activities. Like last year, I did The Hate You Give, and those who wanted to read that book participated in those activities. Those students who did not want to read a novel continued to do activities in Springboard. And so personalized learning pathways are flexible in themselves and how you choose to implement them in your classroom. So personalized learning pathways are student-controlled pacing, flexible access to materials, learning style accommodation. When we go back to flexible access to materials, I like for my students to be able to access what we are doing exactly how we're doing it from class. And I like them to also just sometimes have the option to make things easier for themselves, like to use pen and paper when needed. Although in my class, we are very technology based. Another aspect of personalized learning pathways are individual goal setting, progress tracking, and customized support. And I think that is one of the highest pluses to personalized learning pathways, because once you get students started on a pathway, you can kind of then lend your presence to full customized support in the classroom and or outside of the classroom if it's online. There are some challenges to implementing micro-credentialing and or personalized learning in the classes. These could include resource development needs, technology integration, policy conflicts, assessment standardization, especially if teams are not creating assessments from scratch or using authentic assessments, then this would be a major one. Quality consistency, cost considerations, and access equity. Again, in the middle school classroom, I think this would not be of something that would cost, and I think it would take a lot of planning on teachers' parts to also implement a middle school classroom. As I completed this micro-credentialing module, I thought about how last year I used a badge system in Google Sheets, and it was like a quest list. So students completed an activity, like maybe you read a book and you want to share information specifically about the main character, you can do this and then earn a badge for it. And I only had really one student do it consistently. Many students show interest, but only one did it consistently. And so after this module, I've been thinking about a way to implement that same badge system, and it was also just extracurricular or enrichment in my class. I would like to see it done as a main goal or purpose in the classroom. So this is so far what this will look like in my middle school classroom. All right, interdisciplinary learning is another aspect of micro-credentialing. What is interdisciplinary learning? It is cross-subject integration, multiple perspective analysis, problem-solving focus, real-world applications, collaborative projects, and skill synthesis. My favorite project that we've done, or in my teaching career, was at my old school in Georgia, where students had to plan a trip in Georgia and visit so many landmarks and calculate how much it would cost, create an itinerary, states the landmarks in English and Spanish or whatever their foreign language was that they chose in school. And all of us educators had to grade certain components depending on what our subjects were. So that was one of my favorite interdisciplinary learning activities. Project-based learning integration includes authentic problem solving, tangible artifacts, workplace skill development, leadership opportunities, communication practice, and team collaboration. The recognition and transferability, there is credit transfer between institutions for micro-credentials. There's also professional certification alignment. There's stackable credentials in a few places. Degree pathway integration, there's industry recognition, and there's international compatibility. So these are all pluses for recognition and transferability. The cost and accessibility considerations include variable price models, so no one micro-credential is the same as another. There is payment flexibility where needed. There are scholarship opportunities. There is global accessibility, digital divide awareness, and there are financial aid options. And even though it's not stated, there are some micro-credentials that are technically free. Future trends include an increase in industry alignment with micro-credentials, enhanced technology integration, expanded recognition systems, greater institutional acceptance, international standardization, and workplace integration. A few success strategies for micro-credentials include clear learning objectives, regular progress monitoring, active participation, resource utilization, support network building, and professional development planning. All of the information that is mentioned here is referenced in my essay, and the resources can be found at the end. I hope this presentation has been beneficial, and that is it. Thank you.